Hello, world. It's a cold day in January. I'm lying on my bed with my iPad. It's dark in here, so I've only got a tungsten light bulb to keep me company in here. I live in Borstal, mate. I've been inspired to make this video after I saw a video by a gentleman called Luke Birch talking about why he's never been in a relationship. And he's 20. So there you go. There's your answer, really. He's 20. I'm nearly 50. Now, I'm not going to call this why I've never been in a relationship, because I have been, and therefore it's a bit of a lie. But I'm not in a relationship now, and I haven't been for about 6 years, maybe 7 years even. And it's an area of difficulty in my life. It's an area where I find myself the most frustrated and depressed and whatever. So I thought I'd talk about it with you guys. And I hope that you can sit and look at my face for ages. If the sound goes funny here, it's probably because I've got my hand over the microphone or something like that. So I'll try not to do that. And let's begin. I'm going to try and structure this video. First of all, talk a little bit about my background. I'm going to talk about something called the Internet Jumble Sale. I'm going to talk, going on from there about tech and trust. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about acceptance. Okay. And then I might end it, and it might be about 2 a.m. by the time I finish. It's about 8:30 here now, maybe 9 o'clock, something like that. So a bit about my background then. I grew up as a gay person. I knew I was gay when I was about 14. And we are now talking about being a teenager in the 1980s, in the early 1980s. Life was not a happy kettle of fish for gay people growing up. At that time, okay, it was pretty terrifying. You knew that there would be people, especially in the area that I lived in, and there will be a few people who grew up with me that will be watching this video, and they will know that Clapton in the 1980s, it was still, mods and rockers, coming down on Bank Holiday Monday. Everybody had one of those identities in those days as well, didn't they? Nowadays you don't have it so much, but you have you had the soul boys, the skinheads, the mods, the rockers, the Teds, the punks. And quite often they like to get together and fight and stuff like that, and I never did. Plus, I was just terrified of rejection. I was just one of these people that found it really hard to take the risk of approaching other people, because I was worried, because I suffered bullying. If you suffer bullying, then it's really hard to go and talk to other people, because you're just frightened that you're going to get the same treatment from them, and my kind of modus operandi has quite often been, keep yourself to yourself, keep your head down, and try just not to get your head beaten in today, because I'm a lover, not a fighter. And once I had to defend myself on the Paris Metro Underground, and I found myself actually hitting a guy like a girl. He had tried to take my wallet, and my wallet, the contents of that were all over the ground. And this man was so like a girl. And there'll be females watching this now saying they could probably inflict more damage, and I expect they could. All right. So, that was kind of, the background of me as a teenager, really. I had one or two very close friends, but even those I couldn't say to them. And, thankfully, one of those close friends is still a close friend now. And yeah, I do feel a little bit of a, I suppose, a bit of a betrayal, really, because you would have thought, well, perhaps you could have told him, and perhaps he wouldn't have minded as such. But it was very difficult. I was about sort of 44 or something before I kind of, I didn't even have to really tell him, but it was. It was blatantly obvious because I lead an online life now. Yeah. So when I was about, I must have been 23, only just 23, I met a person, and he was really nice, and we stayed together for 20 years, give or take a few days, I suppose. Maybe 19 years and an extremely very big bit, but 20 years we were together. And I was adopted by his family. Put that in quotes, the word adopted. It wasn't, didn't need a social worker, mate. But yeah, I was adopted by his family, and they're all, very much in my thoughts. I still keep in touch with them. I'm not brilliant at doing it, and I do apologise. But again, some of you will be watching this maybe, and you'll see that I do really still think about you, and I think about you every day. So, please be aware that you're not out of my thoughts. And yeah, so that relationship lasted, and I was kind of, I suppose, safe, and in many ways I was protected from ever having to kind of be an independent person. I couldn't even read a gas bill. 20 years, and just couldn't even do that. And yeah, so that really is a bit of my background. We kind of fell apart. It wasn't a kind of official decision that either of us made. It was just something that, a lot of very unfortunate events happened towards the end of that relationship, which I'm not going into. But suffice to say that there are a lot of extraneous, very stressful circumstances, which meant that, we kind of fell to pieces as such, as a relationship. And, there was a particular time, where, I draw the line and say, yeah, that was it, finished. But that was in retrospect. It wasn't, a decision at all that, that was actually ever officially made. So that kind of is a bit, just a smidgerette of my background. And yeah, so, talking about, I suppose, you know, the internet jumble sale, which is what I'm going to get onto now. And that might seem a pretty odd thing to say. But let me tell you this, okay? I met my long-term partner in a way that many gay people did at the time, okay? I'm going to digress very slightly to say that, people will criticize. They will say, oh, why don't you ever get into the real world? And I'll tell you this, that where I grew up, and where I live now, there aren't a lot of places that you can go to where you know that the people that you meet there will be gay. Okay. Heterosexuals, single heterosexuals, shall we say, can walk into a bar, they can get chatting to someone, people will make assumptions, and they never have to sort of come out and say, look, I'm a heterosexual here, because they just know it. They know a gay person has to jump over the hurdle. Oh, he's nice. Or if it's a lesbian, she's nice. And then you have to kind of then do all the finding out. Are they gay? Are they going to reject me? You know, are they straight and are they going to run a mile? Are they going to give me abuse? Are they just going to let me down gently and say, sorry, mate, I'm straight? And then, and it is a big issue. It's a big hurdle that 90% of the population just do not have to go through. So when I tell you that I met my ex-partner because I replied to a contact ad. Let me tell you how contact ads work, because this is this is kind of, where it's leading on to with this internet jumble sale business. All right, this is what you did. First of all, you had to walk into a shop and buy a magazine. Okay, now there are still publications around like Gay Times that, in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, the back of them was full of contact ads. You had to reach to the top shelf of WH Smith's in order to buy this thing. I think you probably still do. It's not, yes, you will find material of a kind of adult nature, but it's not out and out pornography. It's about a lifestyle kind of thing. It never has been about pornography or anything like that. I do think it's slightly unfair, therefore, to assume that it needs to go on a top shelf somewhere because you're worried about kids finding it or something like that, because there are plenty of magazines that contain images and written work that, either just will not appeal to children or that is not suitable for children, and they're not on the top shelf. So I do think that that's a bit of discrimination there. So, you had to, again, you had to make this leap. You had to be, there was an element of daring and bravery about going in and buying a copy of Gay Times. And, for people of my age, there must be, if I've done it, there must be a million other people who have done it, and that they've kind of, bought a copy of The Observer or something like that. I'm not going to say the Daily Mail because I've never bought the Daily Mail, but, and, kind of, and a few other magazines, photography magazine, Homes and Garden, and, just slipped in an issue of Gay Times or Him magazine. Who remembers Him magazine? I think it was Him magazine that I actually looked in. So anyway, I replied to this contact ad. This is how it worked. In the back, you'd find, the people that you might be vaguely interested in, and you would, there'd be a little number that was attached to it. Okay, and you'd write them a letter with a pen and a piece of paper, because computers were in their infancy in those days. Nobody used computers to write. And I would suggest that if you were ever going to write to an intimate person, whether they're just a friend or whether they're a prospective partner or what else, pick up your pen and write. Do not send them typing, okay? Actually write to people. It really does make a whole lot of difference. It's a lot more personal than, sending someone a text or a Facebook message or whatever, So yeah, you had to write to them. If you wanted to include a photograph, you had to get someone to take a photograph. You had to get the film developed. You then had to put that photograph in. You know, you'd select the best one. You'd be really sad because you'd lost your best photograph of yourself. That would go in with this message. You would then send that to the magazine. The magazine would then forward that to your intended, and if you were lucky, the other person would write back. Well, I was very lucky because I wrote to somebody and it wasn't my partner. I didn't know that, but it was basically, you know, I wasn't his type, but one of his mates was. And it was one of his mates that wrote back to me, and it was then that, you know, we decided to meet one evening near Christmas 1991 outside McDonald's, and yeah, we got on very well, and you know, that became the relationship. And nowadays, I haven't really looked, but I expect you probably don't find, you know, that ton of contacts, you know, ads in gay times or whatever these days. So it's you know, more or less the internet. Now, I don't know about other people, but I am the sort of person who, if I go into a record shop now, given the fact that, you know, I love my music and, you know, CDs, records and stuff, you know, they've just, you know, basically followed me all my life and been a constant source. But if I walk into a record shop, I will instantly forget what it was that I was looking for and kind of feel a bit lost. And this is kind of the dilemma that I find myself in nowadays. Okay, there are so many dating apps on the internet, and it's a jumble sale. It really is a jumble sale. It's really, really hard to try and and find someone that you're interested in through that lot. You know, you think of an app like Tinder, and you think about the miracle that you would have to get somebody to match with you, and, you know, for that person to be sort of on the same continent as you, in the same country as you, in, you know, pretty similar locality to you as well, because, you know, I'm 50, nearly 49. I'm 49, folks. And, you know, I have a life that is embedded in this little town in the south of England by the sea. And, you know, if they're up in Doncaster or Derbyshire or somewhere like that, anywhere else beginning with D up north or whatever, it's pretty much quite difficult to expect somebody to shift their whole life. And, you know, people get ingrained in where they are, you know. So, you know, you do need them to be relatively near you. And, you know, it's nigh on impossible, you know, in the oops, sorry, it's nigh on impossible really to try and you know, find people in that kind of atmosphere, really, you know. And again, people can criticize and they can say, oh yeah, you got to get out there, you got to get yourself out there. But, you know, it's fine to get yourself out there, but not easy still, you know, as I say. And, you know, I carry, as I say, a lot of baggage, which makes me very defensive and quite insular, really. I have friends, I have a social life, I do things, but, you know, again, the chances of you actually finding someone that is available and you know, fancies you and all the rest of it. It's just nigh on, an impossible task. And yeah, as I say, I mean, the internet has kind of caught on to the fact that dating apps are popular because there are a lot of lonely people, and I think the internet is making people lonelier. Okay, and if we talk about now the internet and trust, everyone has got a mobile phone. People can't get off their mobile phones. They can't, and I'm exactly the same. I'm exactly the same. Even if it's just playing a silly game, I will find, minutes of the day where, God, there it is again. You see, there's an email come to me, but I will find minutes of the day to twiddle my thumbs and play a game, or, hope that someone's texted me or Snapchatted me or something like that, and again, in the olden days, and I'm only talking of, I'm not talking about ancient history here. If somebody was going to be untrustworthy to you, again, it would be quite a big effort because of, the circumstances and stuff that I've tried to outline here. And nowadays, it's just piss easy, isn't it? Even Tom Daley has been caught out, and he's in an unfortunate position of having had compromising photographs leaked, from a fling, a cyber fling, and you can almost argue that isn't even real. You're not talking about, getting someone in the back of a taxi, giving them as much cocaine as they can handle, and then, doing the dirty and then chucking them out again. That's, it's pretty mild, Tom Daley, isn't it, really? Having said that, those people were C's of the highest order for leaking those photographs, and that, is part of the internet and trust again, isn't it? You just cannot, you cannot trust most people that you get in touch with online. And even if you had a partner, it would be absolutely dead easy for them to have this kind of secret online life going, and it does wreck relationships. I'm, I suppose, quite a cynical person, really. I'm a cynical person. And I do find that out of the people that I've known or known of that have been partners or, even been married, particularly being married, those relationships rarely last. And they rarely last because of the internet, because of an app called Grindr, basically. A lot of people will say, oh, it's not a very nice name, whatever, and, and it basically, does what it says on the tin, but it doesn't. I've met some lovely people there, and, just friends, but yes, people do. And I think if you're in a relationship and you're constantly tapping away on your phone, you are going to make your partner very insecure. So don't do it. Okay. I would make a sort of bond of trust, and I would take the phone numbers, or make sure I had the contact numbers of the people that, I'd met and that were legit and genuine, really friends, and then just delete it, and the same with, all the other things, really, the Instagrams, the Snapchats. I've become an Insta whore, people. I spend a lot of my life trying to take proper photographs and, learn the craft and present, real kind of, miniature works of art and put them on my Flickr and stuff. I've even tried to do that on Instagram, and, fair enough, some of my photos have had likes and stuff like that. I put on a selfie like this, I will get blooming, 20 or 30 people within 5 minutes that have liked the photograph. Most of them are either, as I say, on a different continent, or they're a business that's just trying to push their services onto you because they think that that's something that you might be interested in because you sneezed or farted in the wrong direction, and so they're trying to sell your services, kind of thing, or sell their services to you. And yeah, so you know I think a lot of those apps and stuff would just go, and I would advise, from my position of wisdom, I would advise you to do the same if you're in a relationship, and if you're finding that that phone is either causing you to have a wandering eye, as it were, or to or causing your partner to feel insecure, then just chuck the apps, you know. And I would do it in front of them and make sure that they know that those apps and things have gone, because they do get in the way. Obviously, nothing is 100% sure, but trying to find people that you can honestly and truthfully trust is quite difficult, and while we're talking about trust and stuff, there's an awful lot of gay relationships and stuff that and particularly gay relationships, and this is digressing completely. In 1984, before he came out, even George Michael, as part of the group Wham, released a song called "I Don't Want Your Freedom." Now if you listen to those words, he's talking about gay relationships. He had to cover it up, but he's talking about the gay relationships that I'm talking about here, where people are free to have their flings and stuff like that, as long as they still come home every day and part of a partnership and stuff like that. But that again, for me, that would just feel like having a relationship based on quicksand. I don't want a relationship based on quicksand. I want something that is strong, stable. Sorry, Teresa, I'm nicking your phrase now, you bitch. But yeah, I want strong and stable, I'm afraid. And it's, as I say, in this world of techiness, it gets pretty hard to trust people. Now, something that Luke Birch, who was the chap that made the video that I talked about at the beginning of mine, he said, he quoted RuPaul. Now, RuPaul wasn't the person who said this. Something like, if you can't love yourself, how can you expect someone else to love you? And his kind of rationale for that was, loving yourself meant having the balls to not get walked on, and that's overly defensive for me. I think that loving yourself is not necessarily a case. It's that's just too over the top for me. You have to, I think you have to find acceptance. What you want is for someone to come along and accept that you are a broken human being. At the end of the day, Luke, men snore and they fart. Okay? Life is not the sort of bowl of kitsch that Milan Kundera, actually one of my favourite authors, in The Unbearable Lightness of Being, he actually wrote this chapter basically about a Christmas card where Jesus was actually being born and somebody else was in the same stable having a poo, because that is what would have happened. It wasn't angels all singing and dancing in this, beautiful scene of purity that we like to sort of paint on Christmas cards, and leave out all the zits and boils and stuff that actually happen in people's lives. And so when you're talking about acceptance, and that's what it really is. It's self-acceptance. It isn't loving yourself. It's accepting that you are a broken human being, and you want another broken human being who you are going to fully accept. You may be able to do some healing to them. I've had an awful lot of healing that's gone on in my life just through being in a relationship for 20 years. And stuff that you just take with you for the rest of your life, and that in the end helps you stand on your own 2 feet. So I suppose it is a case of accepting people and you being accepted. That's all. Okay, anyway, I'm going to end this video now. Didn't really come to any major conclusions really, other than that life is blooming difficult, it's blooming hard, it does get very lonely sometimes, and I'm very grateful to everyone who's been a friend to me, and I've got some very strong friendships as well, that I just can't not acknowledge really as well. People who do look after me and want to see me looked after, and and me the same. Anyway, all right, I've been rattling on for over half an hour, so I'm just gonna press the stop button now and say bye bye world, and see you later. Bye. Right, watch my thumb. This is my thumb.